Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NAA's Mental Health Awareness Week. I'm your host, Tiana Heath, the Senior Manager of Industry Relations with NAA. We are back for day 3 of our 4-part series on mental health awareness. Just a little housekeeping. NAA Antitrust Compliance Statement is on NAA's website where you can review it at any time. If you have any questions, please reach out to any NAA staff member. Just so you know, our information today is strictly educational and should be only used for educational purposes. With that, let's get into it. Mental health continues to be a priority at NEA. We hope to shine a light on this topic and be a thought leader in the space. We strive to bring resources to our membership, not just during Mental Health Awareness Week, but all year long. We just finished our annual survey on mental health. Thank you to everyone who participated. We received impactful information that will shape how we help our industry navigate and present resources and content for this coming year. If you're going to be at Apartmentalize, you can catch our presentation, or you can join us back here in July for a webinar highlighting our findings. Today, we are welcoming back our fantastic speaker, Jennifer Cox, Manager of National Trainers with the National Council of Mental Well-Being. The council has been kind enough to partner with us over the years and bring our association timely and relevant information to all of our members. After today's session, head over to our mental health awareness webpage where you can find more resources. I will provide the link in the chat below. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to use the chat or question and answer. And with that, Jennifer, come on up.
Thank you, Tiana, and good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending upon where you happen to be sitting across this beautiful United States. Thank you for, again, day 3. If you've been here through Monday and Tuesday with us, thank you for your commitment to building your awareness and your literacy, and maybe even feeding some curiosity. I hope you've enjoyed our sessions up till now, and if this is the first day you're joining us, welcome into this space, into this conversation around wellness, and of course for today about psychological safety at work. It's a term we throw around a lot. Some of us may be like, oh, I hear it, but I'm not quite sure what it is. The reality is to get us started, is the weight of the world right now, it's heavy. It's heavy on us in our personal lives, and it's heavy on us in our workplaces as well. We have stressful headlines that we see across the TV and across our phones every day. We have changes in our workplace. We have stress and anxiety, things that we talked about at the beginning of the week. And things, whether they're happening in our neighborhoods, in our offices, or around the globe, they have an impact on us. So as this world continues to shift and challenge us in new ways, most of us, especially since the experience of this COVID pandemic, are really and have been looking to see what is safe, where can I be in whatever world I make up, or what are the ingredients of who I am? What does that safety look like? How can we enhance it? And what is it that we can do to contribute to it? In whether it's at home or in our workplaces. Obviously, today we're talking about our workspace and workplace. And this safety is really about how can we best professionally perform? How can we best look at the capacity of ourselves and those that we work with or work for and lead, and foster this sense of psychological safety? We'll go into lots of definitions, obviously, of what this is, but it's a belief. It's a belief that is shared, hopefully, by the team members, that we are in a place and an experience where we can take risks, where we can make mistakes, where we can express ourselves, where we can do all of the things that we feel passionate about or lean into in a way that won't jeopardize how we feel, what our job role is, our reputations, positions, and all of those things. It is something, honestly, that we all individually have a part in. And better yet, the best thing about it is this doesn't cost us a thing. It's about expanding our awareness, identifying where the needs are, what is possible, and what it is that we can do to move and shift in this ever-changing world, the safety and the experience of all of us as we work together. So before we step into that space, I want to just give us, obviously the opportunity, like we've done before, to just arrive. Time to stop. And I actually have a little memory thing to help us with STOP as we move forward. But I just want to invite you into just a little mini mindfulness activity so that we can maybe slow the pace for a moment and halfway through the work week before a holiday and give ourselves just an opportunity to kind of keep track of where we are, at the same time to put that to-do list, just set it aside for a moment. It's not going to disappear on you, but give yourself permission to stop. And when we stop, it's an opportunity to breathe, to observe, and then to proceed. So with this simple tool, I'm just going to invite you to find wherever you're at, a comfortable space, feet on the ground if they're on the seat, on the ground, or if your back is leaning against something, just notice where you happen to be. If you need to close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath in, you feel safe enough to do that, I invite you to do that as well. And I'm going to invite you to think about, just for a moment, as you gaze at this image, hopefully it feels peaceful and calm for you in this day, halfway through our week. But think of this as a new stop sign. We all know the red one that we see when we're driving, but what about the stop sign that we need when we're out of the car and we're just moving through life? This is something that we can do when we wake up in the morning, before we log on to the next call or webinar, maybe at the start of a training, maybe before dinner tonight with your family. And what this stop opportunity is simply weaving mindfulness into the moment. So it's creating space, which allows that worried mind, the cortisol in your body, the adrenaline that flows as we push through our day, to settle and recalibrate ourselves. So just stop what you're doing for a moment, put down your phone, take your hands off that keyboard, take a breath. I can invite you to do a moment ago and just breathe naturally. It doesn't have to be, 3 counts in and 3 counts out. Just breathe in and notice what you're pulling in and say the word out as you exhale it out, whatever your pace happens to be at. Observe what you think about, maybe how you're feeling, maybe what you notice in the room. Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it bright? Is it dark? And notice that these thoughts and the observations, they're not permanent. If something arises, notice it, let it move on by like a parade, let it be, and then continue on. The last thing is the continue, that's the P, the proceed. Proceed with whatever it is that's going to support you right in this moment. Is it tuning in for a moment, turning off that ringer, quieting the alerts on your computer so you can focus on our time here together? Maybe it's making sure you have something to hydrate yourself during the time that we sit here that you forgot to refill that cup in. But the proceed is what's going to be best for you in this next moment. And hopefully I'll be able to fill some of the curiosity that comes up as we move into the next. So I hope that was safe enough for you to do. I want to step us now into this conversation and give you a little insight into psychological safety. For those of you just joining us, this partnership between the NAA and the National Council for Mental Wellbeing has been going a couple years now. This is, I know for sure, our second, maybe our third Mental Health Awareness Week. We are a nonprofit organization that is in Washington, D.C., that is a membership organization that we advocate and provide benefits for over 3,400 members of the National Council that provide behavioral health and substance use and addiction support to people all over the United States. And they serve over 10 million children, families, and adults across the United States. Our pledge is that we are continuing every single day in communities to fight and connect people to affordable, equitable mental health and substance use treatment. This has improved for us across the years. It's quite a journey that we have been on for the past 50 years as a council. In the past 25, believe it or not, our anniversary is coming up with a community education program called Mental Health First Aid. It's a public education. We've certified over 3.5 million, just under 4 million actually, people on how to identify, understand, and respond. Keyword there, respond to signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use challenges. And it starts with conversations like we're having here today, building awareness, and then moving into more formal opportunities to be certified, just like with CPR and first aid, but to help with mental health and illness and substance use challenges. We believe the more people that understand how to help each other, it's ultimately the responsibility and opportunity for all of us. And we think that we can help our communities be healthier, in addition to all the things that we're doing with public policy and workforce development, equity, integration, 988. Hopefully you've heard of that. We'll talk about at the end of the session here today for crises, for mental health, our emotional supports, and so many other things to help all of us as a community be well. Because one thing that we do know is that there are barriers. Whether it's in our workplace or in our communities, we have barriers to well-being. And this challenge, you can see there are many, many different things that move in place of people getting to that health and that wellness in whatever frame or environment we happen to be sitting in. We know stigma is a part of the challenges that are there. Information, or more like lack of information around what is happening or what may be available to help us or to understand our situations. It's about access, how we get to the resources, like the amazing resources that NAA has that we'll talk about later, the resources in our community, the things that are international. What is this? How do we find it? And how do we actually access and get to bring them into our lives or step into that space? It's about having quality and comprehensive care. That means I can go someone with people that understand me, who look like me, who feel like me, who have challenges that I can feel safe within, and be able to get the supports that we need. And thank you very much, Tiana, for putting those resources into the chat. And we'll do it again later as well, along with others. And it's about how do we support our well-being, not just our mental well-being, but our whole comprehensive well-being, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, occupational, which is what we're talking about here today, and that social element. So this all really wraps together in many ways, and very, very quickly, some of you saw this on Monday, but I want to highlight that this is not just those people anymore. The conversation about wellness is it's you and I. It's the people that sit next to us in our tables at work or in the sites that we go to. It's our family members, it's our friends, it's our church communities. It's us and those that are around us. So you can see the data that is up there that, it's important to recognize, especially that 1 in 5 of us will experience something, but in our workplaces, we have additional challenges. We work a lot. We spend more time working than we do at home with our families and in our own safe places. So when it's not safe at work or we're uncertain about what's happening at work, it further compounds the experience or the potential for things to go outside of line or off the rail or make us feel unwell or unhealthy. It impacts our productivity. It impacts our capacity to work with one another. And today we want to talk about how can we improve this? Even with the statistics that are there, what can you and I do? What can we tune our radars to be aware of? And how can we not only take care of who we are, but impact the culture and the psychological safety of every environment that we happen to be in? So this is what we're going to talk about today. Psychological safety and cognitive diversity, they are related, and it's hugely important for us to understand the relationship between the two. We're going to talk about what is this impact of psychological safety, as I said, on our environment and our workplace. And then again, as always, we want you to have strategies that you can say, oh, I can do this. I can take this with me. I can apply this to my next team conversation or meeting or phone call or structure of the next project or initiative that I'm going to be working on. We want this to be something that you're going to be able to walk away with really clear strategies for and to help. All right. So if you're ready to take this walk with me, again, please use the chat. Please use the Q&A. If you have questions as we go through, Tiana and I are both going to be watching it, and I will do my very best to answer those for you to the best of my capacity. Or if not, we'll get to the answers after we finish our time here together. All right. So as teams, as individuals, I want to stress this concept, this word, cognitive diversity, and individual intelligence. It's not just about being smart about things. The main way that we tackle complex problems is to harness the power of our cognitive diversity as well as our cultural intelligence. Now, this happens when our environments around us are feeling psychologically safe. What it does afford us in organizations and communities that we work with is a really rich opportunity for innovation, for performance improvement, for collaboration, by really unlocking the potential of an individual, of a team, and honestly, an organizational at the level of the organization. So it's all the different layers within how we work. Now, what is cultural intelligence? It's something that we have encouraged in business in many ways. It's the ability for us to turn differences into synergy instead of painful processes and liability. So, cognitive diversity is about the differing perspectives that exist in styles, by the way, of processing the knowledge that we gain and that we share and how we solve problems. Now, psychological safety, we think about diversity and the perspectives, right, of knowledge and problem solving. But the safety is that belief that we're not going to be punished or humiliated or embarrassed for speaking up when we have ideas or like questions and concerns, or even when we make a mistake. And let's be honest, mistakes will happen. We're not always going to agree. Mistakes are going to happen. We're going to have problems that come up that we're maybe not sure how to address. That's psychological safety. The presence of it can really foster a new way or a healthier way of how we navigate this as an organization, as a team, and as an individual. Now, this is a lot to start out on, right? And to kind of digest. So how about we break it down into some little bit more digestible means of conversation. Now, cognitive diversity. I mentioned this, just a moment ago, but when we think about workforce diversity, we probably think of the kind of diversity that you can see, right? Or at least that we can identify easily. We think diversity in our conversations is about race and ethnicity and sexual orientation, gender, age, all of that. That things that as modern workplaces, we want to strive, right, to increase the diversity of the people and the experiences that we work with, around, and beside. Now, as an organization, as employers, we also want to create vibrancy and creativity among our teams in ways that really reflect that diversity of the people and obviously the products and the service, right, that we provide and we're striving to reach. Now, because there is discrimination, we do know that exists. There's marginalization that can happen and happens not only in communities and in organizations. We have to be kind of tuned a little differently and make a special effort to ensure that the members of all groups and any of groups, the ingredients of humanness that make us up, are given a chance to be a part of things in a way that feels safe for them, for us, for you and me. So there's another type of workplace diversity that we need to be paying attention to, and it's this cognitive diversity. I defined it as the diversity that a workplace has that refers to like the ways that our employees and our staff think, the way they solve problems, and taking that diversity level of awareness a little bit deeper, looking at more factors than just our ethnicity, our age, or whatever, but looking at how we work differently. What's our work style? What's our perspective? How do we learn in different ways? Are we visual? Are we kinesthetic, right? What are our personality styles? What perspectives do we bring to the table, and backgrounds and cognitive levels? All of this is a part of the diversity of our workforces. Now, cognitive diversity, it does tend to get a little bit less attention than the other diversities we look at. But when you look at these separate little kind of bubbles of what the diversity is we're going to talk about here today, it's creating such an open and welcoming space to say, how many times have we heard, how are you going to show up to work? Are you going to show up with your whole self? Some of us do, some of us can't, some of us don't. And there's lots of reasons. And one of the primary reasons is fear and feeling unsafe or insecurity about how will that be received if I do show up with all that I am in my workplace. Will it be seen, accepted, heard, given space, and all the questions? Now, let me explain this a little bit further. The value. Cognitive diversity helps to engage us. There's been a lot of studies that have been going around to look at, the topics of diversity, equity, inclusion, which is our conversation on Friday, and how that relates to mental health. But we have found that generationally, we see this a little bit differently. Our new professionals coming to the work world, now I don't want to go into this whole, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, all that. New professionals coming in, those that, have not been in the workspace as long as others, are telling us that this view of, we identify it as DEIB at the National Council of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, that this inclusions means working in a way that is collaborative, where everyone's input and experience is valued. Doesn't that sound like a beautiful thing? Like, we think we have that, but do we always? Like, does everybody feel like, hey, anything I say is going to be accepted and valued in here? But this view is kind of contrasting to those of us that maybe have been in the field and the profession a little bit longer, where it's about the experience and the input that we have. That's where the value is versus the inclusion lens that some of our newer professionals are coming in. You've all seen it, right? And we've probably had things maybe bounce up against each other that because of these differing perspectives has shifted us a little bit. We want to pay attention to the idea of what diversity look like. We're engaging people. Remember this, we're engaging people from multiple generations. Right now, our workplaces have about 5 generations of viewpoints. Think about that. Do we see those other viewpoints? I see mine. I know where I'm at. I'm a Gen X person. I'll admit it. I see things in a little bit of this side, a little bit of that side. Some people that I've worked around see it only from one way. Some see it in, like a kaleidoscope of lenses. What we want to recognize here is though we have these generations in the workplace, if we can harness that and be conscious of it and provide space for it, it can really boost that capacity for problem solving. Because things are going to happen, right? We're going to have to solve things for. It's going to help us predict our capacity and how we can work together. And the other thing that we can really value in this is if we look at these multiple perspectives and create a safe way to share, we're going to get better results. We're going to be able to move past that subconscious cognitive bias, which I'm sure you've had trainings on or have heard or talked about, that kind of under the radar things that we just assume or are without consciously being aware of them. It eliminates our groupthink and really opens up this opportunity for us to see, do, and move in different ways. All right. That's where the innovation that we're going to talk about in a moment comes through. That's where the creativity, that's where the moving quickly through the challenges is really looking at not only those of us in the workspace, but you all, especially in the industry that you're in, you're creating the spaces for people that have homes and you're in their living environments. You're maintaining their living environments. You're building new ones for them in different ways. And this shifts. The new challenges are going to constantly arise because people are constantly evolving. And we want to think about where the biases live, where the instincts are, and where the opportunities can be for all of us. This cognitive diversity has so much potential for success. And when we look at the team members, the people in the environments we're serving, and what this possibility could be and how this exchange can happen, it really sets the stage for some really wonderful things and growth and development and health and safety, believe it or not. So let's think about this way. How do we pave the way for this cognitive diversity in the workplace? Well, a lot of it is recognizing the hidden talents, the skills, the ingredients of your current team members, recognizing where they are, recognizing what they have or what might not have been shared, and giving it space to come into the light. As leaders, as coworkers with each other, we should be actively looking for perspective, actively looking for those voices. Maybe they're the quiet ones, but they've popped up and all of a sudden come to our attention, and maybe something to give some energy to. It's about sharing and not always having to agree, but can we value what the contributions are from those that are around us and what they make? So when we look at this and we move forward and we look at the degree of cognitive diversity and how we can accelerate our own learning and our performance in the face of new and uncertainty and situations and even environments that you may have in facilities where you are supporting or running things, or in your office environments of where you're supporting and running things, what exactly is this and how can we do it? Well, here we go. We want to think about this, and I wish I could see everybody's faces or even your emojis on here, but I'm questioning if you think in your current work environment, if being wrong is something that you want to completely avoid. I probably hear some head shaking like, yeah, man, I don't want to be the one that's the wrong one, or I don't want someone to call me out for something that's happening. There's a little bit of, yeah, there you go. You can put emojis in there. That works. It's like, I can't see thumbs up or thumbs down in here. So how many times have we ever felt that we've been maybe snubbed or ignored or silenced for opinions or perspectives that we've shared? Have we felt that as well? And we're not pointing fingers. It's just, yeah, numerous times, many times. I'm thinking, yeah. Okay. How about feeling like maybe we've been shamed or passed over unnecessarily. And then we're like, yep, nope, I'm shutting down. I'm not going to say any more about it because. Mhm. Yeah, we've been there, haven't we? Yeah, I know the sad face on there. Thank you. I feel that in my heart deeply because we've been there in all of its forms. Fear is what these all land in, right? Fear activates the pain centers in our brain. Yesterday, Phil talked about the brain and neurology that happens in substances. I talked about the brain and neurology with stress and burnout. But when we have these fear centers that get activated in our brain, it triggers and pushes buttons where we start to self-censor, right? It becomes instinct. It slows us down, it paralyzes us, it freezes us. And really, all of us suffers from that lack of innovation because of just plain old a fear that can come through. How many of us go to work every day? How many of us signed up for this job and we're like, yeah, this is great. I should be unsafe whenever I go to work. No, that's not what we're looking for. Creating psychological safety, it requires us to do one thing that many of us have been taught to avoid at all cost, especially those of us that are seasoned professionals and been here for a while. And what that is being comfortable with being wrong. Admitting that we're wrong can have and feels like a disastrous effect on the way that others are going to perceive us. And many of us will hold back in situations. We protect ourselves. Even more dangerous to us is the challenge of a coworker or superior if they're saying something that we don't agree with, and we want to challenge them on that idea, pointing out that maybe that's not where we need to go. There's even greater fear when it comes to, right, addressing this with someone who maybe supervises you or has a leadership role. What we're noticing in the research that has gone on with this, especially over the past couple years, is that we are so busy managing our impressions that we don't contribute at all to the innovation. We're so in our head and worry about that filter, like we're back in middle school again or what have you. But fostering a healthy culture of debate, of conversation within a team can be one way to really help make being wrong okay. Now, what this is that there's a sense that everyone is on trial. People, when we feel like we're on trial and we have that fear, we're not going to bring our full selves to the table. I wouldn't. You're not going to. We've seen it here in the chat and the response that we're like, I'm out. In the name of self-protection, we lay low, we agree, we maintain the harmony at all costs, and this response actually reinforces psychological danger. And I'm going to show you a little diagram here in a moment that is the difference between safety and danger, so you can see it visually for those of us that learn that way. But it prevents us from viewing things. It prevents us from seeing failures as opportunities for learning. And contrasting, instead of focusing on blame, we keep the safety there so we can embrace the mistakes and be like, hey, that failure really wasn't failure. Or look at what we learned from it. It's literally is founded, y'all, in the Maslow's hierarchy. You've probably seen this, basic human needs, right? To support our high performance in our teams, creating the safety at work, it's crucial to not only have this human decency, but also this opportunity for us to move forward and retain what we have so that we can grow in new ways. So the key to an enjoyable work life is having a focus on task and time, both of them existing at the same time. Team dynamics, sometimes and many times, is often the key to the productivity and how we enjoy working in our life. They can harmoniously live together. Now, we can't always choose our circumstances. Every team is not always going to have the same priorities or dynamics, but it's about recognizing that. And what we're going to do is really look at how we can look at this psychological safety and how it underpins our overarching mission and goals for our organization, our business, the association as a whole. And what it is it lubricates, it's like the oil of human interaction in social settings so that we can understand it, create the space, and then unleash our potential in some really exciting ways. Now, there's a couple stages of psychological safety, but I want to touch on a few facts before we get into those. Number one, research, especially in the past 4 years, which includes this COVID experience, is that we're finding that basically psychological safety is the 4th hottest topic in leadership development. It's pretty high up there, high priority, top 5 within there. And that our human resources divisions consider that presence of psychological safety. It's one of the most important factors of the hiring process of why people will even take a job and come into a space to work in any direction or in any industry, believe it or not, just within, not within the housing and residential that you all support. It's about increasing psychological safety. We know that when we do that, it impacts how we value our opinions, what we share. There's even been found in hospitals, which is curious, that increasing psychological safety actually helped with infection control. Now, wait, well, how are those related? But they are in so many ways. Um, a couple of us, some of the other data that there's a percentage between generations that I mentioned before that some of us are like, no, I can't work for a leader that I don't feel safe with. And others of us are like, well, we're just going to work no matter what has happened. I'm going to do my job, check in, check out, which can help us be productive, but can also create some other challenges. And that also we have major companies and corporations, not only that are mentioned here, but ones that we've worked with, I know at the National Council, that psychological safety is the key driver of team performance. Beyond the resources, beyond the funding, and anything else, if we feel safe and a part of, and that our voices can be heard in the way that's, is okay for us to express them, that is a huge indicator of performance. I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting. So, what is the difference between danger and safety? Take a look at these visuals here that kind of can help us to understand. At the top on your left-hand side, and with the red arrows, that fear of admitting a mistake versus the comfort in saying, okay, I made a mistake. What can we do now? Can we learn from it, or do we blame each other? Do we share the new ideas, the problem-solving opportunities? Are we like, yeah, no, they're not going to listen, or I can't, or whatever barrier happens to be there, versus we get a common knowledge effect and it's just that's the way we do it and the way we're always going to do it and the shift never shifts? Or, hey, we found a different way of doing this. We learned from this happened, but now we can fill in the blank, and it increases our innovation and our decision-making capacity. It's really, really a simple cycle. But as soon as we jump from the green side to the red side, it really can take us down a different path or get us stuck in some of these spaces. So what is this psychological safety? Well, it's basically this. It's the belief that that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with any idea, question, or concern, a mistake. That's a big statement, isn't it? I mean, that's a really big statement. Dr. Amy Edmondson is actually with the Harvard Business School, is a professor that coined this term that we all talk about with psychological safety. And believe it or not, it's been around for about 2 decades, if not more at this point. And it defines this belief that you see on the screen. It's about comes to performance, about creating trust. And these are essential in our workforces and an important factor in pretty much any team. It's this cognitive diversity, it's the psychological safety. It's about enhancing how we engage in a way that allows all of us to thrive, which then allows the business and the things and the services that we provide to be that much more impactful for the communities that we're hoping to serve up to. So, what does this mean for us? How can we do, or what can we do to help to transform our environment and create this safety? Well, here's a few strategies, all right? So as a leader, we want to think about this as psychological safety is a way for us to promote a self-awareness. It builds self-awareness within our team. When we recognize, first of all, how we prefer to think and behave, we can uncover those biases that I mentioned earlier that may be impacting ours, as well as our employees and our staff's willingness to share that viewpoint. Self-awareness also empowers us to understand the typical responses we have when things change or there's a challenge. Now, when we have this knowledge, this self-awareness, we can adjust then that emotional response and learn how to act or react in a different way that actually invites discussion versus the hard barrier of this is it and do one way. When we have multiple ways to begin building our self-awareness, whoops, not sure what just happened there. Oh, it's going to give us one at a time. We can react in a different way. So we have open discussion. It's things we see in 360 reviews and assessments, emergenics profiles. It's just how do we understand ourselves? Now, once we start to understand ourselves, we can demonstrate concern, compassion, awareness for the members of our team, right? Whether you're naturally inclined to do this or not, to ask team members how they're actually doing, we can all build a practice around this. It's about checking in. It's about demonstrating concern and interest in them as humans first, not just the tasks we're asking them to complete or to be responsible for. What a thought. All right. Taking this simple action can really help our team members to feel comfortable speaking up because they know that they're appreciated for themselves, their whole selves, not just the work or their product that they're delivering to us, right? The things they do, the checkoffs on the boxes. But that's a human, that's Tiana right there, who has this history and this family life or what have you. And what I'm asking of her, that is a component of it. It's about actively asking questions. As your team, as you're looking at decisions, or we have to pause our meetings sometimes, be like, are we all getting this? Where are we at? Are there additional viewpoints instead of just plowing through? We hear one and go. Counting to 10 in your mind before you move on gives people the space to ask, to say, to share. We actually have a role at the National Council. We're in meetings and we make a statement that we're hoping for responses for. And there's a lot of research behind this that we have a 7-second rule. If we hear nothing after 7 seconds, it's cool to move on. But most of the time, us as humans, we get that space within 7 seconds. If something's going to be said, we're going to say it. And so we always intentionally create that space for voices to have the space to say. So count to 10, count to 7, whatever you need to do, but it allows our internal processors, for those of us that filter through things differently and at different rates, we give that, train ourselves as leaders to give the pause. It operates and provides opportunity and trains our coworkers, our teammates to use the space when it's provided to them instead of just shutting it down and saying nobody cares or nobody wants to listen. We want to provide multiple ways as well for people to share what their thoughts are. Not all of us feel comfortable speaking out. Some of you are probably thrilled that you can't unmute. And when I ask a question, you don't have to speak or hear your voice on this. Others might be like, gosh, I wish I could say something because I need to vocalize it in order for me to process it. But remember, sometimes people are comfortable in different ways and may prefer different ways of feedback. Maybe it's an email, maybe it's a random, sticky note that I write it on and put it in the box in the center of the table. Maybe it's online, maybe it's a Slack channel, Teams, conversation after the meeting is over, but look for different opportunities for the ways people can share. When we do, it's also about showing value and appreciation. If we really want the people that we work with, our teams, our members, our groups, our building people, anything, if we want people to openly share, we need to establish an environment where we feel that all ideas are welcome. So as you brainstorm, suspend your judgment. Remember, we don't need to act on every idea. However, we do and could thank people for the contributions, be appreciative of insights. And that it really, 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 especially as a leader, if we're doing this and we're consciously doing it, it can go a long way to establishing safety. Maybe I just needed to spit it out there and know that it got heard versus, hey, that's the one thing we have to do and act upon. It's also a reminder for us is to promote positive dialogue and discussion. Now, I sometimes get accused of being Susie Sunshine and things. Positive psychology is a big interest in mine. And how do we focus on what's possible versus what's not great? But it's about encouraging our people around us and ourselves to use that positive language to inspire the conversation. Language that is affirmative can actually motivate us to succeed. Let me give an example. So word choices like have not yet instead of can't, or using the word opportunity instead of challenge. This can really help our teammates and ourselves to employ a positive mindset that empowers them. And what this does is it takes away a lot of that fear. I mean, think about when you wake up in the morning, is your rhetoric going, oh my gosh, what do I have to do today? Or I just can't get the energy going, versus getting up and saying, what do I get the chance to be a part of today, right? It is huge, this positive dialogue. Have we go in here? I see some agreement in the chat. Definitely. And if you have other examples, like mine was the have not yet versus can't. If you have other examples of that, throw them in there, inspire each other, share them with each other. I think it's a beautiful thing to do. It's also about being precise with information, expectations, and commitments. Oh my goodness, clarity. What are we talking about here? When people know, we feel safe and we trust when we're mindful and we're aware of the information is being shared that is accurate and it's realistic. Be thoughtful about it. So setting those clear expectations, adhering to the commitments that we make is going to reestablish or establish the trust that your teams have in you. And it's going to open the opportunity for us to be more willing to be a part of things when we know. We all need to know what's coming and have that clear expectation and the information that we need when we need it. Keep it simple, keep it accurate, keep it realistic, and keep it thoughtful, including the humans, not just the tasks that are being addressed. Yeah. Oh, good. These are good. Keep them coming. I'm seeing things in the chat. I love it. In addition to being precise about the information and expectations, let's explain why. If a change happens, let's let people know, right? The word transparency, it's kind of a funny one sometimes, but it's really timelines are going to shift, plans are going to change. Sometimes we need to adjust. All right, so an adjustment has been made. This is why it came about. It's changed, it's new. Here's the clear information about the why that I can give you. And then it gives people the chance to process what the change is and then be able to act on it. Kind of like that idea. The last ones is own up when mistakes happen. Didn't I kind of start that conversation with say, we're going to have mistakes, we're going to have uncertainties. Failure, though, we all know, we've already said it, it can be frightening. It can, in a way to take the sting out of that for us and for the teams that we're working with or a part of, is by owning up to it. Celebrate and say, hey, this happened. What did we learn from it? And ask people maybe what they would have done or what they did that didn't work and what did they think about later that could have been done differently, right? It's always, don't just tell me the problem, but let's come up with what the opportunity is that is sitting here. And what this does is it really helps for team members to recognize they're not going to be punished for something, for mistakes. And it's going to help us to feel more comfortable to say, hey, we took a risk. This is what happened in it. What do we do to move on in this next moment? All right. As a leader, as leadership, and I'm not just saying leader because that's your job title. I think everybody's a leader. It doesn't matter what the job title is that you hold. We all lead in the communities that we work with and for in very different ways. And we can set the tone for this. And we have the power to move success and engagement in directions, regardless of what, sits on the placard of our door or on our business card or whatever. And it's really important that we recognize that. So what's the impact here for everyone? What is the impact of having a psychologically safe environment? Well, we know lots of things. It's going to increase engagement. I've already said that before. It's going to increase our possibility and responsibility. Two big words there, everybody, for accountability. Who's responsible for this? Who can do this? Do we know what we're supposed to do? Sure, if we know what we're supposed to do, it's easy to hold ourselves and others accountable for it. But it's also about that establishment of trust. Not just in your personal relationships, but in your work relationships. Trusting what's happening, what's being given to you can decrease the negative impact that a lot of the other things that happen can have on someone. This trust it's important. It's about avoiding blame. When something goes outside or off the lines or off the tracks, however you want to say it, and instead of saying, oh my gosh, what happened? Ask instead, how can we make sure that this goes better next time? See how that just shifted? How someone might be willing to have a conversation about this? When we look at collaborative language, we foster trust. How can we make sure that this goes smoothly the next time? Think about that statements. It's the language again that we bring up. It nipping that negativity in the bud so that when a team member or person who's a part of the collaborative here does speak up, that it's very clear, hey, we want to work together. This is about all of us fixing this. And it's okay to maybe call people out. If we have people that are constantly saying, oh, well, that was horrible, or we can't, or blah, 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 and say, I hear you, and it is tough, but what do we have the opportunity for? Psychological safety fosters this sense of belonging, and it's a fundamental human need. It contributes to empathy. It contributes to cooperation, accountability, and those are the qualities that in turn are going to continue to build more and more and more trust. All right. So innovation and creativity, this other thing that this can impact, is about letting your team see that you understand and that we can champion one another. When people know that we care and we have this trust, accountability is there, clear directions are given, we can understand and consider point of views and demonstrate. How do we demonstrate this? We're going to demonstrate this by being able to say something like, what I heard you say, Tiana, is that correct? It's coming back and fact checking. I kind of laugh when I think about this because as a therapist, I did that all the time. But as a leader, I don't. Why not? Right? I'm looking at the task versus the human and the challenge that we're all trying to address here. When we ask things like, what I heard you say is that correct? It shows that you want to understand the perspective of the individual. And it also gives that teammate or that team member an opportunity to clarify. By the way, this works really well in parenting too. If you have kids or teenagers, what do I noticed this is happening. Is this correct? Am I hearing what you want me to hear? Right? It's super. It shows understanding. We can do that with a nod of our head, restating of the phrase, but just being very, very conscious of what that is. That's going to create the safety and trust, which is going to, believe it or not, push our innovation as well. It's also about us supporting and representing our team. We need to let our teammates know that we're on their side, right? We need to support them professionally and personally and develop with the developments that are happening as we move along this journey together, and to share what's happening with your own leadership. Like, man, my team did this and it was kind of really risky, but look at what happened along the journey, and give the credit to those teammates when it's due. And that, again, is going to fortify all the psychological safety and these little elements that we've talked about as well. Now, creativity, what does this have to do with it? It's accepting that with creativity, there will be risk. There will be risk. It's central, actually, to psychological safety, is that feeling that it's okay to make a mistake. You've heard me say it a couple times. It gives people, it gives our staff, it gives our teams the opportunity to say, I want to tell you what I'm thinking right now. And it may be great and it may be rubbish, but can we talk about it and see what we can get out of it? That's where the creativity comes. That's the joy of creativity, is throwing ideas around that are completely off the wall and realizing, hey, maybe we could do that. Maybe it did seem kind of odd today, a year ago, whatever, but maybe it isn't. Maybe we could make that happen. I'm an artist and outside of the work world, and I'll put a canvas down and I'll put something on it, and I might be like, what the heck is that mess that I just created? And it sometimes turns out to be the most beautiful thing I've ever painted, because it started with the mess. Yeah, we gave the space, we allowed the risk to happen. And it's about acceptance, and then it's about planning. That's where we start to embrace that psychological safety and accepting that there's going to be times when things go wrong. That's okay. It's actually one of the things in neuroscience that tells us that there's really a need for us to be confident enough to go with their gut in the moment. And when we do, and we think about what that feels like, we don't have to measure it. We just experience it. Then it becomes a place where we can measure and evaluate and say, oh my gosh, look at what inspired what we're doing now. And it came from a different and a new place. No project, product, initiative starts off amazing, everybody. Nothing starts off amazing. It needs time to shift, to evolve, to be reworked. And then those little things along the way are what leads to that final presentation or the perfection, whatever your perspective is. But we'll talk about that in another training. Okay. So where do we go from here? Well, it's important. Psychological safety in our workplaces, it's effective team value. When we value safety as much as we do our physical safety, our psychological safety as much as our physical safety, it's about meeting our performance standards, but also fostering inclusivity of culture. It's more important now than ever. It's about improving our well-being. Remember that whole self to work? Really? How do I do that if I don't know what's meeting me when I get there? It's about creating and helping people to be brand investors, investing ourselves in what we do, in the services we provide, in the community that we're supporting, and saying, yeah, I am a part of that. I am a part of that, and I can speak to it. And those are your employees and those are your teammates that really just gush about how work is awesome. Shoot, I get paid to do what I do every day. Are you kidding me? Thank you. Helps me pay my mortgage, but I'd do it if I didn't. And it's not just saying that in trite. How many of us can feel that way? We can. It reduces turnover when people feel safe and stay where they're at or even come into a job. This is huge. There's a lot of cost that goes into those of you if you're in the HR world of hiring and interviews and all those things and benefits and all that. I mean, this can be a big call or disbursement of people coming in or staying with us. And it is about team performance as well as our own health and well-being. But psychological safety, it's listing off and supporting basic human rights and holding ourselves accountable for that and implementing these things. So, how do we unleash the potential? How do we throw that glitter in the air? How do we bring this to the reality of moving us through and providing a health injection into our workspaces and a safety and that trust that we've talked about and the innovation and creativity? What do we do with this outside of these strategies we've talked about already? Well, I want you to ask yourself a few things. First of all, let's acknowledge our responsibility. Yeah, and the autonomy that's there. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Ask yourself the questions. What do I need to feel safe? What would help me in this moment? How can I help the organization to give me what it is that I need? If you don't know what you need, it's hard to ask for it or find it or any of those things that come with that. And also, how can I make it apparent when I don't feel safe that I need to be supported or helped? This is sometimes the scariest part. That's what you're going to say. It's scary. We're not sure. Whoops, I got a little fast on that. Ask your teams what they need. It's not just about we need more money for this, or I need these materials, or we need additional people, or whatever. There may be other things that we're not hearing because we're not creating a space for it to be shared. And those littler things that we seem, oh, we're just going to run over and go with the tasks, those are a lot of the things that are going to push and allow the tasks to happen in different ways. So yes, it can be uncomfortable. Sometimes we got to make the time for the uncomfortable to reveal what is necessary there. All right. So sit down with your teams, talk to them, ask them, each member individually or as a collective, share your thoughts and be responsive to those. But creativity flows when we don't feel, when our energy is allowed to be unleashed instead of held and contained. Another thing to think about is listening. Actually, when humans share, how are we retaining it? Are we just thinking about the next question we have to ask in the next moment? I think as humans, we are brilliant lie detectors. We know when we're not being listened to. We know that, and in turn, it changes our intention and our attention internally to protect our status and our ego. But when we listen, it means we're open to what the other person has to say. We offer respective and respectful comments and considerations, even criticisms. And at the start of any project or task or whatever, we need to establish the clear ground rules about listening when others share, thanking them for their contribution, and offering ways to build on ideas. Sounds kindergarten, but again, basic human ideas or needs. No idea is a bad one, but can we find out what those ideas are? We can't if we don't have the safety and trust to do that. We also want to recognize when courageous acts happen. This is huge. Team member vulnerability, it's vulnerable to offer an idea, not being sure where it's going to land. If we ask a question that maybe we're not sure if other people have the same question as well, and sharing the mistakes I talked about. When we praise and acknowledge and appreciate these acts of courage, you create more and more safety and trust. The worst thing that we can do is to make a team member feel embarrassed, unheard, undervalued, or feeling vulnerable, which at the beginning of this conversation, many of us said we felt before. So we know what that feels like. What can we do to shift that? Well, we can do these things as well. Third step, admit you don't know. You don't have all the answers. You don't have to have the answers. But if we allow ourselves to model that sitting in a place of uncertainty, you create the space and the safety for others to do the same. And when there's safety in that, we can develop together. We can create journeys through the uncertainty that are really legitimate. And in that place of vulnerability, if there's trust and safety, we'll also have a willingness to improve. We'll have strength that we'll build together. It's leading by example. And you're smart, got you to where you're at, but you don't know everything. None of us do. But the collective may have a little more than the individual. So sit in the uncertainty. Step 4, respond productively to the problems. Monitor your reaction. When you get that first gut, this is what's happening. Take a moment, hold on to it, recognize what's being shared, the human that's stepping into that space, and just be there for a moment. If somebody flags a problem, maybe the first step is thanking them and saying, how could you let that happen? How about, thanks for bringing it to my attention. Thanks for allowing us to see it. Okay. It signals that you respect them And it shifts the focus to the future instead of consequence or punishment or whatever that we all fear and retract away from. We got to train ourselves to be forward looking, right? Forward looking, growth, learn, movement, instead of just in the up, stop that. What else can we do? We've got an opportunity here. So it's a role for each one of us. Step 5, get comfortable with your technology, everybody. I mean, you got tools, you got ways to connect with people, you've got new things to use, smart boards, voice recordings. I don't know, if I don't want to talk, I can type it and send it to you in a quick little text message or a Slack channel. Use your technology and then use that as well to continue things from the group to the one-to-one or one-to-one to the group. These are two-way channels, actually multi-way channels, but at minimum, two-way channels. Let's use them in the ways that make sense and that are effective for each one of us. Please don't forget your purpose. Why'd you log in today? What was it about coming here that you saw on your team? Maybe it's something that you've lost your why. Figure out where that is. Where does it live? We got a 3-day weekend, or for some of you, a 4-day weekend, luckies, to be able to ask ourselves these questions and maybe give ourselves a chance to recalibrate. When we have a sense of purpose in our work, we feel passion, innovation, commitment, and outward and forward looking thoughts, which finding our purpose can have a huge impact on that. So as we wrap up here today, I know we have just a couple minutes left. I want to give you a little bit of a summary. Feel free to take a picture of the screen if you need to. The psychological safety, it is really about our engagement, our accountability, our trust, our innovation, and our creativity. Our instincts know when we're not safe. We can instinctually or consciously actually build the skills and this awareness to reestablish safety and trust and opportunity by looking at all the ingredients and the humans that are doing the amazing work for us. That culture is what we want to shift to, that comfort in sharing, comfort in listening, comfort in problem solving, and making the mistakes because they're all growth opportunities when we see them that way. It's a responsibility for every single one of us, not just leaders. It's you and I. It's the first person who got hired an hour ago to the person who's been here for 43 years. And know that risks are going to happen, and that's okay. We didn't get where we are without stepping and tripping and jumping and flying. All those things need to happen. And let's remember the focus that when we have inclusion and belonging, consideration for the complexity of who we are, the views that we have, and having thoughtful communication with our teammates, this can really foster the psychological safety that is possible for us in our workplaces. I believe that it's there. I've seen it happen. The shifts can change. And please know that there are resources to help you do this. Now, as Tiana put in the chat, she put the links for the resources that you all have. I also have a link up here, or excuse me, not links, but you can go through, and these are resources to learn more about this for yourself, even how-to guides, right? Down here at the bottom that are vetted. We know there's research and evidence behind them. Take a look at them, explore them. I highly recommend. I've read through all of these. Most of this presentation has come from a lot of these resources, but there's so much available to you if you really want to dive deeper into this. Today, in an hour, we can only really scratch the surface, but I hope it's inspired you. I hope it's made you maybe think a little bit differently and maybe even become a little bit more curious about how you can make this happen or foster and encourage it just as an individual and your team and your organization. So thank you very much for your time together. Tiana, I'm sure you have some more resources to share, but appreciate this conversation and your involvement, everybody in the chat. Thanks so much.
And thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Just so you guys all know, reminder, tomorrow is the day of care. Make sure to take a little time and do something you enjoy, just for you. Even if it's 15 minutes of silence and deep breathing, or that wonderful being present that Jennifer shared with us earlier, do something toward your first step towards your path of self care. For more tips, head over to our mental health resource page. We look forward to seeing you for our last session on Friday at 2 p.m. A consideration for DEIB. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.